Hey folks, this is the long-awaited critique for the Scenes the Boardwalk Cafe. Sorry this is coming to you so late. Let's get on it. For this one, you guys had to animate a character of your choosing, someone recognizable, uh, walking across the boardwalk in front of our character in the over-the-shoulder shot. And for this one, you did have to use the actual scenes from the boardwalk as the setup file. You would animate Max or Maya or any other character of your choosing walking past the coffee shop window in front of the character in the foreground. All steps had to be animated by hand, not cycled. Your character needs to enter and leave the frame during the walk and must walk at least 8 steps, which is 4 full cycles. Right, left, and then back to right would be the 1 cycle. Your character needs to perform at least 1 action during the walk that helps establish their personality. Camera angle needs to stay the same as it is in the file. Walks need to be mechanically correct. That's what I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to largely be looking at that for half the grade. And then I want to see good overlapping action in the actual performance. Good renders as well. For extra credit, you can animate a second character on the boardwalk who reacts to the first character in some way. Whatever you want to do there is fine. And then, of course, rendered 1920 by 1080. The main grade is going to be focused on the walk being mechanically correct and your ability to show character. Hey, Lynn, you're up first. Let's take a look at what we got. All right. We talked about this a bit in class, but I still want to hit things just because it's been a while. Want to make sure that you have a good handle on what you did well and what could use a little work. We talked a little bit about the fact that you need to have a character enter and leave the frame, but you did just with the second character. That being said, if it was for a portfolio piece, which this one, with a little bit of work, could definitely be there, having this character outside the frame would just make cutting and editing into your reel easier, and all it would be is one more step. You've done most of the work. So something to consider. You're fine for the assignment, but just something I want you to be aware of. Overall, the performance is great. It's really fun. I'm enjoying the scene. I definitely get a sense of the characters. The surprise of this one here in the second half is great. Sorry about that glitch. It sells really, really well. It's a funny setup. I would say if I'm going to get picky, like if you want to actually get portfolio level out of this, it's a great setup, but this character feels a bit mechanical. The walk is decent. It's pretty stompy, but it works for that particular character. The bigger issue is that there's a clear hit there. He hits, and there's no reaction there. We're not going to get much because the focus is on here, so we don't want to lose too much time on it. But anyone looking for this on a reel would be watching this guy and would be disappointed to see that there's not much there. It's a missed opportunity. We talked a bit about this performance as well, just that here he just kind of like pulls us out of nowhere, and that's fine. It's just a matter of like it just literally appears like coming out of his skin, and it's pretty clear that that's what happens with a simple gesture here, but something more distinct and defined, something that actually feels like he's pulling something out of his wallet. This would sell perfectly. So that's a pretty hard cheat right there. I love the pause. I think it's great. We talked about the bit in class too. Talked about that a bit in class too. I know that not everyone was on board with it, but I think the majority of people were. Everyone laughed. That's always a good sign. I'm here at the end. Same thing. Like he just sort of gets it near his skin, and it just sort of gets absorbed in there. But with a little simple, like literally 2 keys, you could have a gesture that reads as I put it in my pocket. I take it out of my pocket. Anyone looking for to hire someone's going to appreciate that level of trickery. Honestly, it benefits you. The pose here, expression, they're all really great. They work with the big strutty walk. I love that. The walk itself feels really good. There's a couple things here. If I want to get a little bit picky, right here, he's a little sticky. He slows down right there and has to speed up to catch up. So you have some little bit of a timing issue in if this is the z-axis, pretty sure it's the z. It just takes away from the sense of weight a little bit. His bump reads really well right here. His hand getting caught and then him sort of having to catch up right there feels really nice. I think the timing that's really good. The bump on him though, not quite as believable. And partly it's also the lack of reaction and just the slow kind of like his arm fading back just feels a little awkward. That one could use a little bit more work. But back to the walk, it has a good sense of weight. The up and down is really nice. I'm not seeing... Heel might stick a little bit there. Toes going through the floor right there, so it's a little bit low. You can see right here there's a little bit of a pop in the foot. It gets stuck in space, so make sure it continues rolling forward through the walk. It should be a smooth motion. Normally a person would be extending their legs a little bit more than this. So here, with the contact pose being right here, the leg's pretty bent. It still goes down, which is what gives a good sense of weight, but here you can see it's really bent. So people usually right before they connect to their heel to the ground, their leg is almost all the way straight. So you could do more with that and it would read a bit better than it does now. With that knee kind of being bent, it tends to read a bit stompy. Here, when the character comes back to this standing pose, it does stop suddenly. You need another pose there, another follow through to make that not die. You're getting some overlap. I can see it with the head, but what you really need is another pose there to keep the body alive, that moving hold. It just feels a little bit dead. Same thing here. You're doing a nice job of offsetting the keys, but what you really need is another follow-through pose, and you just don't have one. So your character basically is kind of just floating to this pose and then stops. Stylistically, it's a style, but it's not going to give you the sense of weight that an actual follow-through pose would. When your character starts moving again, it looks like everything kind of... you do a nice lean with the leg lift, but the body is really stiff as it takes off. That could use an anticipation pose there, would help make it read better, and some overlap as well in the body and head that just feels really stiff. And again, same thing on the backside. You're like 6 frames from being out of the picture. You might as well get them out. But you have great movement in the shoulders. That's really nice. I think trying to look for overlap here. Got some nice movement on the arms. That's good. Got some overlap in the head too. It's a little stiff, especially here. As he comes back, I'd expect to see some delay on that head. So that feels a little bit stiff. So I'm just watching the other walk. The other walk is definitely not to the quality of the first one. That's something that would keep this from being off of a reel. Your shot's only as good as the weakest part of it. You're getting nice contacts though. Again, a bit stompy here with the leg not fully extending. You can go ahead and extend that even though you want it to be stompy. The pose will read as stompy better than the non-extended leg. And it looks like, just in terms of tracking the body, there's a lot of like up and down right here at the base of the walk that feels awkward. It should be a little bit, I don't mind the up and down just because again he's walking stompy, but you got these moments where they kind of accelerates dramatically that makes the walk feel uneven, and that takes away from the sense of weight. So here again you're slowing down in this direction, and then it's fairly smooth on the backside. Where was it? Yeah, there's this big drop right here. Are you lifting your foot early? You do need to work on your lift-offs, even with the character that's stompy. I think if you went and looked in your graph editor for both the up and down motion in the root and the forward motion in the root, it's probably a little bit rough. It probably needs to be smoothed out just a little bit more to keep that weight going forward. A big part of this though is just there's really not much, if any, overlapping action in the body, and you can feel it. It just feels really, really stiff. When he takes his hand off here, stiff. There's not really any performance there, and of course there's no actual performance. So I'm being picky. This is a second character, but I'm being picky because I think this has potential to be a real shot if you clean it up a bit. I love the premise. I love the idea. Just needs a little bit of polish. But other than that, nice work. Hey, Reuben, you're next. Let's take a look. Cool. I like the fact that you went as far as like do a nice fade on this, have a little delay here, added the sound. There's lots of good stuff in here. The actual shot itself is funny in terms of an action, so that's really good too. I think the music works well. I don't know how much of this you put together, how much we just stole from somewhere else, but either way, I think it works with this. The one thing I would say is the rip happens a little bit late. So he's already stopping right in here. And I think the rip is happening exactly the same time. So normally you'd have the rip happen and then he'd react. So there's a little bit of oral confusion there, you could say. But still, I like the whole premise. It's a good idea. I'm going to turn the sound off for now. That being said, in terms of the walk itself, I like the double bounce. It's fun. There's definitely a lot of stiffness in the walk. I think we're missing a lot of movement in the upper body. I'm going to actually shrink this up too, since nothing's happening right there. So you can feel the stiffness in the back especially. You can also feel it here when the character stops. There's overlap in the different body parts, but there's no overlap in the body parts themselves. So like the left arm and the head come in at different times, but the left arm itself arrives everywhere at exactly the same time. I'm guessing there's probably not much in the way of follow-throughs, which we need to look at. And then once the character starts moving again, it's really robotic and stiff. You're also getting some distortions and stuff with the foot itself, so you're getting some twisting in the ankles. That's you. That means you're right here. I can see your knee is inverted. Your knee controller needs to be out here. So there's some messy stuff like that that definitely is keeping your walk from feeling as strong as it could. Let's take a look at some more specific mechanics in the walk and see what's going on here. Oh, and in terms of pose, it's not really much of a pose here. Like, this character has so much character in the action that he performs, and with the sound and with the style of the walk, but the pose itself is pretty dry. So I think that's a huge missed opportunity here to create a lot of fun. Like if you just showed me this pose, I'd have no idea what this character is like. So we're trying to get that in from the very first pose that we kick off on this shot with. In terms of the walk itself, there's a number of different issues here that you should be aware of. One, when the character, well, I guess some of the big ones, your root is kind of stopping and starting a lot. It should be a much more consistent motion, even with the double bounce. So what we're seeing here is sometimes the character, like right here, mostly is driving way down and then has to kind of shoot forward here to catch up with their leg. And then right here, they've caught up too soon, and now they have to slow way down. So you're not being consistent with where the center of the mass is on each of these steps. So remember that, on the contact pose right here, your character should be somewhere in the middle of the 2 feet. As you hit the down pose, the character should be down the back of the foot. On the passing pose, they should be on the ball of the foot. Not even really sure the passing pose is here, probably because your leg is too low. And then the up pose, your character's weight should be in front of the toes. So this one's actually correct. And something weird happens in here. Your foot sticks in space and then comes down. You have multiple places with hyperextended legs, like right here, your rear leg is hyperextended. I noticed right here at the beginning, your front leg is hyperextended. That means that you need to pull it back a little bit, maintain just a little bit of a bend in the knee. In this case, funny enough, you have the opposite, which you have too much bend in the knee. The legs should come a little bit farther forward and almost fully extend into the contact pose, which means your character is a bit low for a normal walk. When your character picks his foot off the ground, this is a broken foot, by the way. You need to push way farther up in the ball of the foot to make this okay. This would be very, very painful. And then when you push off of this, notice the foot comes off at the same time the leg does. This character would fall right over. You can't push off that foot. Wow. You can't push off that foot until the character is farther off the ground. So somewhere right in here would make more sense. I don't mind the exaggerated movement here. It's a bit awkward though. You do lose weight. There's just not really a big setup for it. And also just pose-wise, like this is just visually hard to read. You don't have much negative space here. Your feet, your hand, these are all kind of colliding in the same space at the same time. The other reason why you're losing weight here is there's really not much of a follow through. So the character comes up, they're kind of in the middle of their biggest stride yet, and they just hit this pose and stop. So you would need to come here and let your body hit and bounce, or do a soft accent. You need overlap on the body, on the arms. All your overlap is on this crazy head movement. That's really fast. It's funny, but it's really fast, and the neck almost looks kind of broken here. So you can just see kind of all those crazy movements. So you're overdoing it there. You need to be aware of when you're basically breaking the model. We no longer have confidence in how it works. Pose-wise too, while this is funny, his hand doesn't read really well. This would actually be better if you're, just because it's really flat and a silhouette to the perfect silhouette to the camera. This actually be one where it'd be better if the other leg was forward. He could kind of turn his butt towards camera, and then maybe he tries to look over at it. Here, his eyes sort of disappear from the sockets on his head. We can't see his butt where we expect the rip to be. We can't see what the hand is doing. So you're basically obscuring all the details that we would care about most, including those eyes. In terms of the walk itself, in terms of the upper body, we already talking about the walk. I'm not seeing any overlap or minimal overlap in the upper arms and the wrists. I'm not seeing any. Feel really stiff. Definitely movement in the head, like that's something you got into, which is good, and that helps out a lot. I'd like to see that same level of attention to detail in the arms and the hands and wrists. When your character takes off here, we already mentioned this a little bit, but you're taking these enormously high steps that feel pretty awkward. You're pulling off the ground way early. It just feels like that because you're not taking very big steps. So I guess technically it's okay. You do have issues though here, like we're hyperextending this back leg. This one, the foot never actually pushes off the ball of the foot. It just kind of like floats off the ground. And the toes is kind of floating up on its own. This should all be dragging, not leading the action. That's really awkward too. If you're going to do something like this where the character is actually stepping up on their toes, when they hit the ground, we'd want to see the heel dip a little bit as they put weight on it. And as they push into the next pose, somewhere right in here, the foot would extend back out again. So that's also really stiff and awkward. Here it goes straight through the boardwalk. So there's just a lot of, then we have the knee reversal. There's just a lot of sloppiness there. So, when he talks, the whole body and head are really stiff. We haven't talked about lip sync, so I'm going to give you a pass on that one. That's fine. But the other stuff you should be able to play with and do more with. I don't mind that he walks out a little faster. But it feels like even here, he starts to speed up considerably right here, and it's noticeable, which doesn't really fit the performance either. So you want to be careful of that type of stuff too. So overall, Reuben, the idea is great. It's really fun. It's funny. The execution is stiff, needs more overlap overall, and needs some adjustment to the walk cycle to give it a proper sense of weight. So going in the right direction, needs some work. Hey, Richy, you're next. Let's take a look. All right. So, first of all, I totally love the idea. It's really fun. You definitely have a pretty distinctive character here. You have some good performance ideas. So, lots of fun stuff going on here. The biggest issue, though, is there's a lot of mechanical issues. There's a lot of performance issues. There's a lot of timing issues here. And all those are bringing the quality way down. This is a crazy long shot, 26 seconds. You could do this whole assignment in 5 seconds, which is, 5 times less work for sure. And what that buys you is the ability to spend more time getting good quality. So I'd always rather see that shorter shot that meets the mark than a long shot with big quality issues, even if the story is funny. So let's talk about the walk itself first, and then we'll talk about the performance. So right out of the gate, you actually have a decent pose. Mostly it's kind of riding on that line of action. The expression we can't see too well. Looks fairly neutral. Hand pose, nothing really spectacular going on there. It's mostly kind of lost and mostly kind of letting the line of action do all the work. That being said, by the time you get to the middle, the line of action's gone, and the character just sort of turns really wooden and stiff. So you really want to push those initial poses, make something that really reads well. It's kind of clear here we're just looking at sort of a base level posing job. Those poses don't necessarily get better throughout the performance. This one is pretty awkward, stiff, not that interesting. That one's getting more fun, but it's a little bit too little too late. And then, this part here is incredibly stiff. I'm not really sure what's going on. And by the time we get back here, we're just kind of back into sort of a generic pose land. We don't really get much going on here. The hands are pretty much unposed. We're lost that cool line of action in the back. The character sort of stumbles out of the frame and doesn't even quite make it. So definitely, your poses in general need to be pushed much more. These poses are fairly weak and not that exciting. In terms of the walk itself, got a lot of issues here too. Let's just start with the feet. Well, we can't really see the feet too well, but I can tell they're sliding. So right here, this one definitely slides into place. This one here also, it's just feeling really weightless. There's no sense of pressure on it until he lifts his leg, and then by then it's too late. So what's going on here is you need to shoot reference for this. You're trying to get the character to turn around, but all you're doing here is just sort of going through the basic, just guessing really, and it shows. This is not how people stop and turn around. You have no sense of weight here, so here, there's no sense of compensation with his upper body versus the lower body. All his weight is on this foot here, and yet he just picks that foot right up and slides right around. All the things we talked about not to do when we were talking about, from the very beginning, from the big step. Remember that to pick up this foot, he has to get his weight off of it. He's got to lean to this side to get that foot over, especially at this speed. He's moving really slow. You're doing that a lot. So right here it happens again. He picks up this foot, and I think in the middle is he picks up both feet. Yeah, so right here, both his feet are off the ground, and he's just levitating. So you have a big weight issues. This motion right here is just the big step, but sideways. And instead, he's sort of just fumbling through it. We can feel it. By the time he gets to his performance here, there's some nice ideas, but you're totally twinning, meaning the left side of the body and the right side are doing the exact same thing at the same time. So there's no overlap there. And it's a symmetrical pose. It feels pretty dead. A good way to combat that is, hold one of his hands back and have it come up late, but then still arrive at the same time would be a good trick. Hey, Richy, I'm going to break in here just for a second to let you know that I made a mistake and I stopped recording right in the middle of your critique and then didn't start recording again. So just erase half your critique. So if I'm going to keep going, I'm going to do it again or do what I think I missed again. But if I repeat myself, it's not because I'm trying to be a dick. It's because I don't know what was recorded and what wasn't. I don't want to start all over from the beginning. So sorry about that. I was talking about here that just as a performance, this feels really dead. That's for a number of reasons. Again, the timing is really slow. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. In general, you got to shoot reference to this stuff and then actually see what the timing's like. I think I already mentioned, but maybe I didn't hear when the character turns around. Shoot reference to that. See where your feet go. See what happens first, what's happened second. Right now, you're just sort of winging it and getting the character around to where you want them. It doesn't read very well. Here, for all the kind of the robotic feeling here, part of that's timing, but part of that's the pose too. The pose itself is very symmetrical and very stiff. There's no overlap on any of the body parts. Everything starts and leaves at exactly the same time, so that makes everything feel even stiffer. You're not getting pauses in here, so here, like, it's part of the timing issue. When he does the flex, he just kind of floats out of that pose. He never actually stays there, which means you don't have a follow-through pose. You know, if this is your key here, then he needs a follow-through on it. You know, if he comes down into this, have him pop back up a little bit. That's with a hard accent with the body and the head and the arms, but he just floats to the next pose. This one also, no follow-through. This one has a follow-through. It's also the anticipation. That's good, but it's just not a great pose. Like, the arms are really stiff. They barely move. Like, from here to here, they're just stuck to the body like pieces of wood. And you constantly have issues where your weight's not in the right place. So here, he's trying to get his weight over top of this foot, but his whole body is hanging out over here in space, which just doesn't work. You have to get those poses working. You have to get that sense of balance. Otherwise, your character just falls apart and we don't believe it anymore. Sorry, I'm trying to open up my Epic pen here so I can draw. Once the character starts, leaving here, it gets even more wooden. So the character is very stiff, very straight. You're no longer posing the hands. The character just sort of rotates in place, literally rotates in place, and then starts doing kind of this weird zombie walk off the screen. We don't have any poses in the hands. You're again kind of flipping back and forth on the back, and we don't get him out of frame either. He needs to be completely out. So lots of issues there with the performance. I appreciate the level that you try to take it to. It is funny, but it's just not a very strong performance and doesn't have a good sense of weight, and mechanically it's really off. In terms of the walk itself, let me mute that. In terms of the walk itself, there's a number of issues going on here. We do have sliding feet. I can see it, even though they're hidden by this bar, which is also awkward. It'd be better to have it come down earlier or come down lower or be up higher in the frame. I'm seeing it specifically right here. As he plants his foot, it slides backwards. This one also slides, which means you're not using the right controls. There's some odd things going on here, like right here, the character is like launching their pelvis forward instead of walking forward. This is a huge stride. In the middle of the air, the character is putting down their leg, but their body isn't going forward anymore, which is really weird. He's basically hovering in space. And what that means is that you're pushing the body too far forward right here. This is like a sprint pose. And then they have nowhere to go, so you have to slow them way down. And you kind of keep bouncing back and forth with these principles in the walk. You got some weird motions in here too, like with the character who goes backwards and whips forwards and then back again. It's going to create a jittery flutter, and we can't really have that in the walk. You want the movement to be relatively consistently forward, even if we're looking at someone who's drunk or something like that. So that's also, you lose a lot of weight right there. I'm not seeing any overlap on the upper body, on the arms, on the wrists. Everything seems to be moving at exactly the same time. Even the head until right at the very end, all the way over here. Again, no overlap in here either. When the arms go, the whole arm goes at the same time. Then this one stops in space and it rotates. These aren't great poses. When he puts his arm down, it's literally the arm drop exercise we did in class on like week 2 or 3. Your arm is dropping down, and yet it just drops down in one motion. There's no breakdowns here. It should be dropping elbow first. That never happens. Same thing on this side. So I'm not seeing much in the way of in-betweening. I'm not seeing much in the way of breakdown poses. All those things are basically taking a performance which has a lot of potential and making it seem really stiff and dead. I can tell what you're doing, but I'm not seeing the performance. I'm just seeing you tell it to me. So all those things take some work. I think to fix up. In the end, I applaud you for your idea. I applaud you for pushing it in terms of length, but the quality is suffering tremendously, and that's something that is really important here. I'd much rather see a 5 second shot, even a 3 second shot with great quality, than all this stuff going on that's really funny, but ultimately the quality being really weak and the performance feeling really weightless. So this one could use some work. Hey Anya, you're next. Let's take a look. Awesome. This is short, sweet, simple, and really, really well done. Great render too. Lots of just great choices going on here. I also really love how you're timing everything out in terms of the pause right here with the wave. Even though you didn't have to animate this character, it's really nicely done too with the character, waiting to wave until after this character finishes his performance. So they really pass off well. They're even in the same place. It's really easier for our eye to move over. So nice choice there. And I love that, as he leaves there, that's when you wait and then have the head shake. Really well done too. A lot of stuff at the beginning with this character I didn't even notice, but that's exactly what should happen. It shouldn't be distracting for us. So also really well done. So I love the setup here. It's really, really smart, and it's successfully done. The issues that you do have are relatively small, but they're worth working on only because I think this could be a really nice portfolio shot for you. There's some really great stuff going on in here. So, just a really nice sense of weight, and again, the nice character and personalities. It's a simple action that you've chosen, so it doesn't really necessarily describe the personality really well, but I love that the fact that the character stops in the middle of the conversation to wave and smile, that says a ton about them. So I love that setup. It's really great. After we've done some practice with lip sync, it'd be worth going back, maybe after the quarter's over, and animate him actually talking. He's clearly talking. That's what his hands are doing. The fact that his mouth is not is really weird. It's fine for this. We haven't talked about lip sync yet, but this would be super easy just to add him talking, even faking it. Or if you need to, pick some dialogue and actually animate to it just to make sure it feels more accurate or believable, realistic. But it wouldn't take much for us to buy that. And it's not even that long of a piece to have to do lip sync for. So definitely worth doing there. I love the hand gestures there. They speak volumes. In terms of mechanics, the pause right here feels awkward, and I think it's not the fact that the pause is there. It's just the way that you're doing the pause feels a little bit weightless. So let's see. I think a couple things. One, as the character hits and slows down, this is fine, but we'd expect that as they kind of move into position here, that they'd probably come back up a little bit as part of the pause, as opposed to just here and then just sinking slowly down. It doesn't sell quite as well. If someone's going to actually kind of stop, they probably even come down and then circle back a little bit on the route to actually come to a complete stop. So I'd want to play with that follow through a bit. Again, just right now it's not reading very well. There's also the issue that the character is slowing down, and while they're slowing down, they actually pick this foot up off the ground. No one would do that. So here, you're thinking about it really well, but I think the better thing to do is just keep the toes on the ground. That's much more believable, rather than move up onto the tip of the toe. This is really a weightless position. I don't use it much just because it doesn't sell well. I kind of push to that position very quickly as part of the release of the foot coming off the ground. So don't pause on that spot. That looks weird. Just keep pressed on the ball of the foot, and that'll keep the weight, and I think that'll help a lot. Yeah, and again, I think it's just because it's such a slow, steady stop right there on the route that it feels awkward. At this point, I think you'd actually probably come to a stop or maybe push up again. So one of those things I think that definitely needs to have a little bit of play on it. You have some minor issues that are super easy to fix on the feet. Here you have a tendency to hit this position with the foot, and then the foot stops going. And then again, the release is a really slow release into the down pose. So this is the contact. As you go into the down, you should still be pressed on the ball of the foot, not up on the toe. You only go to the toe position when the foot foot actually leaves the ground. So that should be happening right here, not all the way back here. Let's see if we can see it in this foot too. Yeah, you can see this foot moves forward on the ball of the foot correctly right here, but then it stops in space and then continues on with the floating up on the toe. Probably even worth, you're good enough, it's worth shooting reference or just watching your feet to see how they release from the ground. I think that'll help a lot and give you some ideas of how to make this look better. But you got to have that foot continue moving forward. It should be continual rotation all the way through until the foot's in the air. So that would help out a lot too. I love that second glance there. This would be nice to put some blinks in here. I don't think he's blinked the whole time. That also feels awkward. So now that you know more about blinking, you can also do that. Little wave is great. I love the little fingers on there. It's really nice. Beautiful overlap on that. I like you haven't overdone the overlap here. I think this part feels very natural. That being said, as we get to this part and he starts walking off again, his upper body does get a little stiff. That could use a little bit of softening and sweetening as well. Watch your poses right here. He's really launching forward to get to this up pose, which means he's probably not moving quite far forward enough right here, or he's just too far forward in his up pose. It's one of the two. Actually, he's too far forward in the up pose. I can see it because when he hits the contact pose, he just stops in space right there and comes straight down. So your up pose needs, the body needs to be farther back to keep a consistent movement here. And this one feels okay. So minor things to fix. It's a great performance. I love the setup. This one could definitely be portfolio quality. You just got to go back there and add in some of those changes and you're good to go. So excellent work. Hey Sam, you're up next. Let's take a look at what we got. All right, this is simple. I'm fine with simple. The character's personality definitely comes through, stiff and brutish. The walk feels pretty good, but definitely feels a bit stiff and robotic. My guess is because it could use more overlapping action. I think gesture-wise, this one's okay. It could be more fun. I'm not sure what this is. Is it like, oh, he flips him off. Okay. It doesn't read really well silhouette-wise. So his middle finger, especially at this speed, his middle finger gets completely lost here. This is a type of thing where you want his arm to come up, you know, like up here, something like this, and have the full classic, you know, silhouette happen there. I know this is a terrible drawing. Forgive me, it's a mouse. But this is going to show up. This gets completely lost. You need that finger to be up like this so we can actually detect it. You might be able to get away with raising your wrist up, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to do it. But always be aware of that silhouette and how things are reading. I've watched this like 7 times and didn't get that he was flipping him off. It also doesn't feel directed, right? It feels like he's like his main gesture is flexing. So this like a little bit of a flick of the wrist doesn't read. So that could definitely be better. You know, for the flex thing, I'd also say like, I'd rather him just, it almost makes more sense for him just to flip the guy off as opposed to like this like walking sideways flex. He almost feels like a crab there. Like just as a performance wise, I'm trying to think of the situation where that would happen, where he wouldn't like stop and flex in the window instead. It just is such like it's a type of gesture you do directly to someone and yet he's walking sideways by him. So they don't really seem to mesh together in my mind in terms of a performance, in terms of selling his character. But definitely people walk by and give people, you know, flip people off and never stop walking. So to me, that sells so much better. The walk itself, in general, I think I already said this, feels pretty stiff. I don't mind the speed. The speed kind of works for him. It's pretty funny, but it works. I think you're close in this one. It just needs a little bit of love. I wouldn't recommend going back and changing this necessarily. You know, if I was going to do something here as a director, I would tell you, make him stop and flex for real, like actually do the motion and then continue going on and flip him off as he leaves, or just make him flip him off and don't do the flex. It's worth noting that, here you can see in his back is getting ripped apart here. Like, you don't have a great pose here regardless. It just feels like he's twisted to kind of get a better sell, but it's not a believable twist. So something else to keep in mind here. So I think I would, if you're tight on time, the easiest fix would be maybe take away the full flex and just have it be a partial turn with the bird and have him like then go back to what he was doing. I think also part of that is that sideways look. He just does like the entire body at the same time and the head. He never, like, normally, of course, what would happen, his head would look over first. He'd notice something, then turn and flex. Like, there's no kind of thought process there. It's just like, here I am. So maybe just take that out and have him like look over, look like and do the bird, or even not look at him and shoot him the bird. Flip him off. I don't know if you know that term. When he comes out, the pose isn't playing the camera very well. Like, his arms, you can't tell he's doing. Looks like he's cradling a baby he doesn't have. It's a little confusing. Here, just, don't worry about the big arm swings. You can keep this side like a little bit more restricted. Might be a better sell here. I do like the motion here of the finger, by the way. That one does work. Just it's the final silhouette that doesn't. In terms of the walk, a few things. So here, you're not completely smooth in this direction. So you can see as he comes in here with the contact, that looks pretty good. But then between the contact and the down, he barely moves forward. So he stops in space right there. You have a few other moments where it's a little bit more inconsistent. Oh, no, actually, that looks pretty good. This one, you're a little too far forward on the up. So he's hyperextending his leg. And he's too far forward here. And therefore, whenever you're too far forward on one of the earlier poses, then the next pose gets too short. So from here to here, it becomes too short. And most people are consistent with that. If you always go too far forward in the up pose, then you always don't have enough room to go forward for the contact. And that's where your hitch is every time. And that's what you're doing. It's not every time. Like, those are all fine. But you do it again right here. Too far forward. He has nowhere to go for the contact pose. So he doesn't really go anywhere. So he's a little stop. And if you watch the animation, you can see where he's kind of jerking a little bit. It's not terrible. But you can definitely feel it. You also got to watch your feet. That looks good. That's through the floor. Here it pushes through the floor completely. You probably just had the wrong tangent on that foot. You could work a little bit better on the release here. I can see it jiggling around. Again, probably the wrong tangent. And then when he takes off, he just sort of like levitates off the ground. You don't have to do this for a few steps before we can't see his feet. So this would be an easy fix too. Would look a lot better. The character's head, almost no overlap. Elbows, wrists, almost no overlap, if any. Upper body, very little overlap. That's all what's contributing to the stiffness of the performance, and all things that take away from the quality of it. So, again, in this case, I think, performance is a little bit more subjective, whether we think it works or not. I think it could use a little bit of love. The mechanics, though, definitely do need love, but it's not much. You have all the basic stuff there. It's simple tweaking, and that simple tweak makes a big difference. So I'd recommend doing it. It's worth the extra bump and grade and wouldn't take you that long. So other than that, though, nice setup, decent work, quick and to the point, sells pretty well. Hey, Sam, you're bringing up the rear here. Let's see what we got. All right, Devo guy. I love the setup. I love the character. I'm not sure how often this guy is at the beach, but I'm pretty sure I saw him in California and in Florida, in both coasts. So I'm going to say yes. So really funny setup. The downside here, of course, it needs to be rendered. So I'm not going to give you a grade until it is rendered. Once it is, I will fix it. So I'm going to give you a 0.1 out of 10. When you render it, I will upgrade it. I'll put the actual grade in the comment section so you know what you're going to get. Because that would only be fair. So great setup. In terms of the actual walk, we have some big issues, though. Not super hard to fix, but are going to take a little bit of persnickety touch-ups, per se. The timing is really good. I think, let's see. We're like a half step less than the required amount, but I'm fine with that. I think you're close enough. I'm cool. If this guy's head wasn't the way, you would have gotten the full set in there. The two big things that stand out to me are this. So right here, your walk's pretty consistent here. pretty boisterous but consistent, but right here it's not. Right here, you're lifting up your leg way too early, and your character is way behind where their weight should be. And then here you launch the character forward onto this foot, and then you stop in space, and then launch the character forward again. So what you end up with is a bit of a hitch in the step there. You can feel it. Whoosh. So not sure what happened there. Let's see if you're lifting your foot. It's tough to tell if you're lifting your foot early because your foot is barely on the ground. That's one of the other major issues here. But let's just see. This would be the passing pose. That's about the right position for passing. For an up pose, you're not forward enough. So if your foot is somewhere right around here, your body should be all the way over here. So you're way behind on the body right here. So your character slows way down right there. But somehow you're still moving forward at top speed. I'm not sure how that's possible. Let's see, I'm trying to think, what's your frame count? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so you're about a 12 frame step. That's actually normal. Yeah, we have similar issue here is you don't like going forward for the up pose. So here you should have the body farther forward. Part of this is because you're doing the wrong thing with the feet on every single pose, and therefore you might not know where to put the body. That could be part of the issue. But here you're racing to catch up to the contact pose, and you're way behind. So the contact is right here, it looks like, and your body should be middle of the 2 feet or slightly forward. You're close to the middle, you're slightly behind, but then notice that from the contact here to the down, your character moves forward almost not at all, just stops in space. Again, inconsistent movement on the Z, or for you, the X axis. So what you end up having to do is between the down pose and the passing pose, you have to race the character forward suddenly right here to catch up. So you just need to be much more consistent with where the center of mass is for your character when you're doing a walk. Here, again, you're not moving far enough forward on the up pose. We hit the contact, you're again way behind where you should be. The down pose, you stop moving forward, and then you're going to have to launch forward to catch up in the passing pose. So from the down pose here to the passing pose here, you've gone like 3 body lengths, and you should only be going 1. What's making this also confusing is that your leg is just shooting forward. It's not actually doing the pose. So it looks like you're actually not doing the correct poses, which is pretty important. The other thing is your feet are just sliding all over the place. You're not using the right controls for the feet. They're not locked down. There's no sense of weight there. That absolutely has to be fixed. You're also, your foot is coming up in the down pose. It shouldn't even leave the ground until the passing pose. So you're full pose early on that foot. It never comes up. So that's also problematic. You're getting away with not adding a lot of overlap in the head because the character is like so stiff. But you're getting away with it because of the side to side on this motion here, which is really funny and fun. I love it. So I think it's okay, but you're not getting any movement on the overlap in the back this way. And because you're not getting any overlap anywhere else, plus the feet sliding, the character just feels really, really stiff. If this is me, I would definitely be adding, not overlap in the hands because they're going to be stuck to the keytar. That's not going to happen. But I would be adding a little bit of subtle overlap on the back just to loosen him up, and maybe a little bit on the head just to keep him alive. He feels really stiff. That might be enough to do it, and then you'd be good to go. The last thing here is you're required to have the character do some kind of action in the middle of this performance, and your character is not doing that. So they need to do at least one thing. Maybe they stop and do a quick solo, just a little trail with the fingers, and then they're back on their way. Maybe he sticks out his tongue and does some kind of move, like whatever you want. But he doesn't have to stop, but he's got to do something that is a requirement. So that counts against you as well. So Matt, I love this setup here. I love the idea. It's really genuinely funny. It's one of the best characters we got on this round, but you got to finish it out the right way. So with good quality. So let me know when you get the render up, and I will give you the grade that I put in the comment section. Okay. Oh, and I totally forgot, if you go under content and video tutorials, there are multiple videos of how to do the walking, and specifically you need to watch the one on the feet to see how the feet work. So you need to watch this video for sure. Doing this alone would make a huge difference in the quality of your walk, just doing that. The other things are important too, but that's the big one. The other two, the loosening up and in between, would also be a big help to help you kind of get a sense of what should be happening. Okay?